quilters. Well, we're moving right along, and now we've come to block 7 for our sampler quilt. Block 7 is called Bar None, and as you can see, it was created by Diane Harris, and it really is a cute little block. Simple, easy to make, and just as cute as it can be. And I'm sure that as you choose your fabrics, you will make it as beautiful and dynamic a block as possible. So let's get started. Now you see your cutting instructions here. And once again, we don't need a template for this one, so we can get right into cutting our fabrics. And the cutting directions tell you that you need certain rectangles for the various spaces that you see in the block. The easiest way to get these rectangles is to cut one long strip of fabric the width of the fabric, and then cut your rectangles from that. For instance, all of the blue bars that you see here in bar none, they are all 1.5 by 4.5 inches. So my suggestion is to cut one strip of fabric that is 1.5 inches wide across the width of your fabric. Then all you have to do is divide that into 4.5 inch lengths, and you will have the blue bars that you need. And you can do that for each of the fabrics. Notice in this one, there's a black and white stripe, and the bars here are 1.5 by 6.5. These two, this one and this one, 1.5 by 6.5. Once again, you can cut a strip of fabric that's 1.5 inches wide, and then cut each bar from it that's 6.5 inches long. The little bars that you see between the blue bars are 1 inch by 4.5 inch. So once again, cut a strip of fabric that's 1 inch, and then you can go in and cut the 4.5 inch length that you need. So I'm going to hold this up one more time so you can see the cutting directions, and then I'll hold it up again at the end so that you can see the cutting directions once more. But the block is simple to cut, simple to construct, and I think you're going to enjoy this little one because you get a great result really from not much work. Here you can see that I've placed the pieces that I've cut on the table. And once again, remember I'm using African fabrics. So I've chosen the blue African fabrics for 2 of my units and the red African fabric for 2 of the units. And I decided to make all of the bars white. You're going to use whatever color combinations that you choose to use. But here is the block, and here is the construction. And you can see how the block is laid out with the bars going horizontally on one unit, vertically on the unit beside it, and vertically on the unit below it, and horizontal in the unit beside it. So we're going to mix that up. You can do it your way. Perhaps you want all of the bars to go vertically. You can do that. Perhaps you want all of the bars to be horizontal. That's going to be your choice. But this is how the creator of the block designed it to be. So I need to go to the sewing machine and begin to sew. But before I do, I want you to pay close attention to what's going on here. Remember I said since you have all of these rectangles that are 1.5 inches wide, you can easily cut one long strip of fabric, the width of the fabric, and then that is 1.5 inches wide. and then come back and cut them to the lengths that they need to be. You could do that with what I have as blue. You can also do that with what I have as red. Then these little bars between are all 1 inch wide. And so you could cut a strip of fabric that is 1 inch wide across the width of your fabric, and then come back and cut these to 4.5 inches in length as they need to be, so that you can make your cutting a lot easier and make it go a lot faster. These white bars are 1.5 inches wide times 4.5 inches. So you can cut one long white strip or blue strip or whatever color you want your bars to be, and then just cut that strip into the 4.5 inch length that's required. That makes cutting so much easier as opposed to trying to cut each little individual piece as you go. So let's start with a long strip and then just divide that long strip into the pieces we need. Okay, I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew this unit together. And once I do, I'll bring it back, let you see it, and let you see how I have pressed the seam allowances, because that's always important. Here is the instructions for constructing the block. And you can see that you sew these rectangles together in the middle, and then you attach the two rectangles on either side. So that's where I am. I've sewn the rectangles together in the middle, the three white bars and the fabric between the bars and at either end. And now I am ready to attach the rectangles on the side. Here's one, and here is the other, following the directions that are on our construction sheet. And there that is right there. So I'll go to the sewing machine and complete this unit, and then I'll show you what it looks like. Here's the unit completely sewn. And we've got the bars in the middle, and we've got the two ends in the middle, and we've got the two sides on. And this follows exactly what our construction sheet tells us to do. So I've completed this unit. We'll sew this one next and show you the two units side by side. Here are our two units. And the next thing we will need to do is sew them together. When I'm working with 12-inch blocks and they have 4 units in them, I like to completely make all 4 of the units and then look at how I want to sew them together. Sometimes it's easier to just sew these two together, and then sew a horizontal seam connecting the two parts that have been sewn. Sometimes it's easier to sew this one to this one, this one to this one, and then have a vertical seam that completes the block. I'm not sure it makes a difference this time with the design with which we're working, but I'm going to leave these as they are. I'm going to complete these two according to our directions that I'm using. And then when I have gotten all 4 of them, well, these last 2 completed, then we'll look at how we will sew the 4 units together. Here are our 4 units all sewn together, and I'll lay them out. And we've got our 12-inch block. And there we have bar none, and just like you see here on the picture. Now you're going to use whatever fabrics and colors you want to achieve the effect. I like the fact that it is even shown using a stripe, and I think the block would be beautiful with a series of stripes. And so you might have a striped fabric that you'd like to try. By all means, go ahead and try it. One other thing I would encourage that I didn't do, but to use a print for the bars. The bars don't all have to be a solid fabric. And if you notice right here, a print is used for the bars. So you might try that and try it in more than one part of the block. There are 4 units in the block. You might use it in all of the units or just one as you see here, or any number of the units. Now my job is to sew these 2 units together, these 2 units together, and then I will finish the block with a horizontal seam. And that will be our completion of the bar none block. Here is our finished block. All 4 units have been completed. The 2 top units are sewn together, the 2 bottom units, and I've joined them together with the horizontal seam in the middle. And so that you can see it more easily. There is our bar none block. Really like this little block. I think it has a lot of promises. I would love to put it on the front of a tote bag or use it as a pillow. I can just see it in a variety of ways, not to mention a whole quilt. However, I think if I made it into a whole quilt, I would want some colors in my bars. I wouldn't want all of the bars to be exactly the same. Now, I told you that I was making 2 of each, and so here is the second bar none block that I made. And only used 1 African fabric in this and used the 2 neutrals, but I still love the way it stands out. It pops. It's pretty nice block. So that's our bar none block. We have followed the directions that were given us on the page, and we've completed all 4 of the units exactly the way it's shown here. And now we've sewn those units together. One thing I didn't mention was pressing the seam allowances, and I'll just use this one. In each case, when I did 1 unit, I pressed all seam allowances in one direction. I didn't try to get all of them behind the dark fabric. They were just so little and a little too tedious. So all of the seam allowances were pressed in one direction. And the seam allowances for the outside bars were pressed toward the outside. So that would be your pressing instructions for this block. Thank you, and block 7 is on the way. And forgive me, I just said block 7 is on the way. This is block 7. Block 8 is on the way. Here are your cutting instructions.